In the first episode of Demon Slayer, we're met with our main character, Tanjiro, and his pretty big family. He's got a couple of siblings, a mother to provide for, as we find out that he's the breadwinner for his family, with his father presumably having passed away. It looks like his specialization is in charcoal making, and his days are comprised of going out to cut some wood, making it into charcoal, then taking the trek down the mountain in order to sell it to the townsfolk of the nearest settlement. On this particular occasion, he's making his way back home quite late and is encouraged by a town elder to stay at his place for the night so that he isn't attacked by demons. Tanjiro brushes away his concerns as he doesn't believe in demons, but decides to console the old man regardless and stays the night in this mountain hut. First thing the next morning, he's on his way home, expecting his family to meet him there, but unfortunately, he's in for a rude surprise. He finds the bodies of his family strewn all over the place, blood everywhere, and presumably dead. That is how we are introduced to the world of Demon Slayer. I was reading the book of Job recently, and I don't think there's anywhere else in the Bible, with the exception of Jesus, who is so well acquainted with the reality of suffering in our world. The start of the book, well, it's not only the start of the book and the narrator who describes Job in this way, but God himself in verse 8 of chapter 1 says, "There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." And that is the point of contention that all of the characters we meet in the book of Job try to discuss and reconcile. From the beginning of this story, God himself says that Job has done nothing wrong, yet a couple of lines afterwards, not only does he lose all of his oxen and donkeys, not only does he lose all of his sheep and camels, not only does he lose all of his servants tending to those possessions, but he also loses all of his sons and daughters. Though that's not even the end of his afflictions, Satan visits him to give him sores all over his body. Then his friends come along and they're meant to be here to comfort him and help him in his pain, yet they then accuse him with a multitude of things and basically say it was his own fault that he's been afflicted with so many terrible things. It was probably because of Job's sin that God had brought punishment upon him. God's justice in their minds is one where evil people are punished and good people rewarded while they are on this earth. Job does ardently defend himself as someone who has not sinned and is therefore not deserving of such punishment. Yet this is the tension that Job and his friends find themselves in. If God is just, then these afflictions sent upon Job are perfectly justified if Job has sinned. Yet Job knows himself, and we know as people who've read the first chapter, that Job has done nothing wrong. So do we then side with Job and accuse God of being unjust? Because it's certainly unfair that this misfortune has been brought down upon him. Tanjiro Kamado is by no means a Christian. As far as I'm aware, he certainly doesn't even fear God, though his character is pure of heart. We find out on the Mugen train that this is the state of his heart, perfectly clear and devoid of any malice. He's such an innocent kid that he has mercy upon the demons who he's been tasked to kill. He's so dangerously optimistic that he almost gets killed by Nezuko in hopes that she could possibly change, that she could be different. Throughout the anime, there are so many moments where we see Tanjiro be so good, be in a similar place like Job, blameless and upright. So just like Job, the question that we ask is, why is it that this misfortune has befallen Tanjiro, that his whole family was so brutally unalived? The question we ask of God is, why do bad things happen to seemingly good people? The problem of evil is a question that all worldviews, including the atheist worldview, need to provide an answer to. The existence of evil doesn't actually disprove Christianity, because if we say evil exists, then what do we do when we become atheists? Evil just exists and we can't do anything about it. So even if atheism is true, it doesn't really provide the individual with a way to respond to evil in the first place. So what matters then is how we respond to evil and suffering. That ought to be the core of the answer, and we see Tanjiro from Demon Slayer offer the first part of that response. While Job responds to God by blaming him and accusing him of wrongdoing, and while doing that persists in his lament, what does Tanjiro do in the face of tragedy? He only gets back up. He sees that he has one surviving member of his family left, and he dedicates the rest of his life to not only protect his sister, but to also commit to defending anyone and everyone everyone who becomes a victim of demons so that no one else is forced to ever experience tragedy at the hands of a demon once more. As I said, Tanjiro is by no means someone who fears God. There is no indication in all of Demon Slayer to suggest that, yet his response to tragedy is far superior to what Job does, someone who believes in God. Though the responses are different because there's another aspect of the world that Job has yet to consider. Just before the section where God lambasts Job for his ignorance, Elihu first speaks about all of the ways God has been gracious to Job, even while he persists in his afflictions. God woos you from the jaws of distress to a spacious place free from restriction, to the comfort of your table laden with choice food. God says to the snow, fall on the earth, and to the rain, shower, be a mighty downpour. Listen to this, stop and consider God's wonders. Do you know how God controls the clouds and makes his lightnings flash? Do you know how the clouds hang poised, those wonders of him who is perfect in knowledge? The world is designed in a way in which God's common grace abounds through it. Yes, there is evil, but in every bit of good that we see in the world, it is God who brings it about. Every rain cloud that breaks every drought, every suggestion to do good to counter every decision made in evil, the fact that the universe continues to exist and God is gracious enough to continue sustaining the existence of the universe. Yes, there may be evil in a world like ours, but what Tanjiro does is, in light of all the good that continues to occur in the world, he responds to evil by attempting to overcome it. And even though he is doing it in a deficient way because he isn't doing it in recognition of God, he's doing it nonetheless. I too am often troubled by the permeation of sin throughout the world. One does not know, nor does one comprehend why God in his perfect will has decided to allow evil to continue to occur. However, that is the reality of the world that we must accept. Even if we decide to disbelieve in God, it doesn't change the fact that evil continues to impact us. What matters then is our response to evil. Two other characters from Demon Slayer who are relevant to this discussion are the demons Daki and Gyutaro. When we meet them during the Entertainment District arc, it's evident that they have unalived a huge number of people to come to this point of strength in the first place. They are efficient in their cruelty towards every person who they target. So, how do they come to this position in the first place? When we see their backstory in the last episode, how both were children of poverty, that they suffered through much in their childhood, that their mother was mostly absent, that they were scorned by the local community, Tanjiro makes the remark that this could have been the path that him and Nezuko could have gone down. Instead of looking towards the good, Gyutaro and Daki, in response to evil, in response to the injustice which has been perpetrated upon them, instead of fighting against evil, they embrace it wholeheartedly. And we see some of this kind of response in the book of Job, where Job's wife flirts with embracing evil and instead of running near to God, goads her husband to abandon God altogether. I love how God speaks in the final chapters of Job. It is comforting for the Christian to know that God's plan still remains sovereign, and all that he asks us to do is to trust the plan. When one blames God for the world's problems, it is often lacking the perspective that only God can hold. Having read these final chapters, these questions directed to Job, I feel are also directed at me, at that part of myself that doesn't fully trust God's plan. Indeed, where was I when the foundations of the earth were laid, while the morning stars sang together and the angels shouted for joy? I am not the one who shuts up the sea behind doors, nor do I give orders to the morning and the dawn to take their places. I am not in charge of the storehouses of snow and hail, and nor am I in charge of the times for which they are released. Am I the one who takes care of the ibis, the cockerel, the lioness, or the doe? Do I know anything of the world, this world filled with majestic creatures, with empires which stretch throughout continents, with structures and beings? I know nothing of the sort. In a world as complex as ours, one can reject God and his plan and his purpose. One can embrace the sin for which the world revels in, or one can draw closer to him and respond differently to a world which has evil in it. As I did speak a lot today on the notion of evil, I do have a video exploring more of the portrayal of evil in Demon Slayer, for which you can watch right here.